What is up, Raider Nation? It is I, Biggs, back with you. I got Raider Damas here too. We are in your building, and we're ready to talk some Raiders football. How you doing, Raider Damas?
I'm doing very well today. How are you?
I am excellent. I just had a big milestone birthday, and my existential crisis is over. I'm good now. So we're good. We're ready to get into this, and I'm going to start the intro. Producer. All right, we are here. It is Thursday night, and we want your questions. So, like and subscribe to the channel. Throw your comments in the comments section. We'll get to whatever we can. I actually opened them this time, and so we're hoping to do that. But we have a lot of stuff to go over tonight. We have rumors that are flying around. We have free agency getting ready to start next week, and most of the rumors are coming from that. We had a combine this last weekend, the NFL scouting combine, and a lot of performances to talk about. And then, it's off season. This is the best time for chatter. This is the best time to talk about stupid stuff. And that's what we're here for. And hopefully you are here for it too. So, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to address some stupid rumors. I hate rumors. I'm not a rumors guy. For so long, we were going to sign Tom Brady. For so long, we were going to sign Aaron Rodgers. It was rumor this and rumor that, and I hate them because the only thing that matters is when the 53-man roster comes out in August and is finalized. You can't listen to training camp talk. The only thing you can do is look at the depth chart. But we do have a couple of milestones. We have a couple of weather vanes. One is the free agency period, and the other is the NFL draft. And those two things are coming, and we're excited for it. The first rumor: Russell Wilson being cut by the Denver Broncos and signing with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Well, I think it's important to remember when we consider all these rumors flying around is that the period between the end of the Super Bowl and the beginning of the NFL draft is what we call lying season. When nobody wants to tell the truth, everybody wants to set up smoke screens because nobody wants anyone else to know what they're doing. And they will leak false information to the press. They will leak false information to other teams. They will leak false information to their own beat reporters. They will do all of that because they want to remain secretive about everything. As far as Russell Wilson goes, he was unceremoniously blocked by the Denver Broncos like yesterday, I believe. And I think he's already meeting with the Steelers, and I think that's a much better landing place for him. I think if you're going to draft a quarterback, as the Raiders absolutely should, if you want to bring in Russell Wilson at veteran minimum, to be a mentor to that guy, you can do that. The problem is the moment that young kid starts to suck and throws the interception, the fans are going to be chanting for Russell Wilson, which is not really the position you want to put that young kid in. I wouldn't have wanted Aiden O'Connell to have, look over his shoulder at Jimmy Garoppolo last year, and luckily he never really did. But I think if the Raiders are going to turn over a new leaf and get a new fresh start at quarterback, you don't want that guy who's won a Super Bowl standing behind you. I think that's the position you want to put Kenny Pickett in because we hate the Steelers and want them to fail.
I think the best thing that happened to Aiden O'Connell last year was Jimmy Garoppolo sucks. So the barometer that we had, the scale that we had for Aiden O'Connell was he's better than our starting quarterback. I don't think that you could say that about Russell Wilson. Now, let me just say this. In fairness to Russell Wilson, he's a Super Bowl winner, and he did have a pretty good year last year. It
He
just so
did.
happened to be with the Broncos. And it's not like he's so old that, I mean, his performance has fallen off because of age. It tracks exactly with the age curve.
Sure.
In his mid 30s, he's supposed to be having the seasons he's having now. But he's 0-4 against the Raiders in the last 2 years. Why would any team want to sign a free agent who has a losing record against the team that is right? Like, there's no incentive for the Raiders to sign Russell Wilson. But that leads me to the second rumor that I heard today. Kirk Cousins to the Raiders.
I think Kirk Cousins is a Falcon. I think his family is already looking for real estate in the greater Atlanta area. I think you could book that one. I don't think Kirk Cousins to the Raiders is realistic. I think he's a Falcon through and through.
I don't think so either. But I don't buy the Atlanta thing myself. I think he's going to sign back with Minnesota. In the NFL, continuity is very, very important, and Kirk Cousins returning to that team with his receiving core, with the new starting running back that they have, signing some free agents on the defensive side. Kirk Cousins has shown that he knows the offense. There's no reason to move on from him. I think he goes back to Minnesota.
Entirely possible.
El Capitan. I've been told about this. Jimmy Garoppolo experiment was failed. He doesn't have a great arm technique, and he doesn't have a defense around him. And he also doesn't think that Cousins is going to the Raiders, but the Falcons need help. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Also, shout out to Shimley for joining and getting in the chat with the Raiders. All right. Next rumor. Josh Jacobs to the Bears.
Well, the Bears always like to run the ball because they can't pass it, and so that's the only other option they have. I think Josh Jacobs to the Bears is certainly a possibility for them. I don't see them putting big money in his pocket. I think the most they would offer him is maybe $7-8 million. But if the Raiders aren't going to tag him, he's fair game. The Bears have for a long, long time put an emphasis on running the ball. And as long as Josh Jacobs is healthy, he's about as good as it gets. So if they wanted to do that, I think it'd be a step up for them.
True. They do have a young kid in Roschon Johnson who is supposed to be taking over at some point. They have a couple of running backs in the building. One of them, I don't think they would lose by cutting, but I don't think that they're incentivized to bring in Jacobs at all unless he's going to split the backfield with Roschon Johnson. But then he may as well be splitting the backfield in Las Vegas with Zamir White. Get Josh and Zeus in the building. We'll get to the combine winners and losers, but over the last couple of weeks, we've talked a couple of times about a satellite or third down back, and that's with Bolden and Abdullah leaving. That's all we really need in that backfield is just re-sign Josh. And I think if it comes down to Vegas or Chicago and Josh is looking at the same contract from each, he's not really incentivized to uproot himself and go to Chicago. He loves Antonio Pierce. We've talked about it on the show before. And
yeah, I think if the Raiders make a fair offer to Jacobs, he would have a hard time accepting a deal somewhere else.
Yeah,
unless they really throw the bag at him, another team like the Cowboys or the Bears or whoever. I don't I've heard the name Saquon Barkley floated around for the Raiders, but I think he's a Houston Texan. They have a bajillion dollars to throw around, and he's from Houston. I don't see him going anywhere else. I think Josh Jacobs is answer 1A for the Raiders at running back. So I really do think the status quo will win the day for the Raiders as far as running back goes.
I don't think there's any reason to bring Saquon in. And if Josh leaves, draft a running back.
Sure.
There are plenty of guys who are going to be there. There are no superstars at running back in this draft, but there certainly are guys that can supplement Zamir. I think the Raiders are they're in the power position as far as Josh Jacobs goes, but I don't think they want to let him go either. It's just the free agency period. He's going to go and he's going to get some offers and stuff like that. There are going to be teams that are interested in him, but I don't think anybody's going to give him enough money to take him away from Vegas. So all they have to do is just mind their P's and Q's, and Josh is back in the building.
I agree.
All right. Next one, Justin Simmons.
Yeah, he was released by the Broncos this morning, I believe, after almost 10 years in Denver.
Right.
And, pretty much leading the league in interceptions in that time frame. You don't find guys of Justin Simmons' talent and ability, on the street just lying around. Those are special players. I'm not sure if he's a fit for the Raiders. They have two pretty good safeties as it is. But someone is going to give a bag to that guy, and he deserves it.
And it's not just that we have two safeties. We have three good safeties. I mean, Isaiah Polamau as our third safety, yeah. I like him a lot. I don't see any reason to bring Justin Simmons in. So, that's that. There you have that. We don't really need safety help. We need help on the defensive line. If there were rumors about a certain chief coming to the Raiders, then that would kind of like move the water a little bit. Anything else that you've been hearing?
I think there was a thing on Twitter where somebody tweeted at Chris Jones saying, "If you join the Raiders, you're dead to me." And Chris Jones tweeted out the hand holding emoji, shaking hands. So that's the only thing I've heard of. It's just Chris Jones likes to troll on Twitter. He's just a funny guy.
Sure.
But I will be talking about him a little bit later when we discuss free agents.
All righty. That sounds good. I mean, we'll have more free agency stuff next week. We will have all of the cuts. We will have signings. So we'll get into way more of that next week. So let's get down to some combine winners and losers. Now, I want to hear yours. I have a big one, okay. And yeah. I have a big winner and a big loser for me. So let's go ahead and start with yours.
Okay. Well, I think the obvious big winner here is Xavier Worthy, and I think you would probably agree with that. When you break the combine record, modern combine record, not counting Bo Jackson, for fastest 40 time, you're something special. Even if you have hands of stone like Xavier Worthy does, and you're another John Ross, that's still going to put you into the first round. And, I don't know if Xavier Worthy was a first round pick coming into this combine. He may have been in some people's eyes.
Yeah, he was.
But he's most certainly a top 15 pick now. I think a lot of his issues of catching the ball were due to him having a broken hand at some point a couple of years ago. People don't really remember that, but he did have some, health issues with his actual hands. Last year, he was much better in that respect. But I heard plenty of jokes about people being, "Oh, Al Davis has risen from his grave to make sure the Raiders take Xavier Worthy at 13, which is not going to happen in a bajillion years. But he is a sort of pick because I watched him take Darius Hayward-Bay, and that is the kind of pick Al Davis would absolutely 100% make. And somebody is going to make that pick, and somebody's going to have a damn good wide receiver on their hands.
Yeah, somebody texted me that like Xavier Worthy should get drafted by the Raiders, and I said Al Davis would love you. The problem with Xavier Worthy is he's in that dead zone for us where he's going to be too late to take him at 13 because we don't need a wide receiver. We don't need to take a wide receiver at 13, but he's going to be too early to last until the second round, the number 44 pick. So, I mean, if he falls for whatever reason, if most of the NFL scouts like let him drop, then maybe with the second round, I could see like making that investment. But this wide receiver class is so deep. You're going to be getting guys in the third and fourth round, a la Hunter Renfrow, that are going to be wide receiver 2s and 3s in the NFL and perfectly capable of putting up huge seasons. So there's no reason to waste the draft capital on somebody that early. Third round, fourth round, I'm all in, but not with our 13 or 44 pick, especially if, like the rumors are true, we're going to be moving up in the draft. So Anybody else that you had your eye on?
Oh, yeah, I got a couple more guys who won the combine here. And Michael Penix Jr. Um,
Hmm.
had a fantastic workout.
Absolutely.
His medicals checked out. He cleared. He's healthy, which is really the only question a lot of people had about him, because he had been hobbled by rib injuries and foot injuries and all sorts of injuries throughout his entire career. But if that guy's healthy, I mean, I've seen him single-handedly just tear defenses apart. His deep ball is impeccable. His short touch is really good. The way he moves around in the pocket and avoids pressure, it's almost supernatural. I mean, I really like that guy, and I hate what he did to my beloved Oregon Ducks twice last year. But I have a begrudging respect for him, and if he were to become the quarterback of the Raiders, well, I would buy a jersey. Um,
Yeah.
the last winner I have here is Isaac Guerendo, the
Hmm.
running back from Louisville, who ran a 4.33 40-yard dash, which does not seem super noteworthy at the running back position, except that Isaac Guerendo is 221 pounds.
Right.
And he is that's the fastest time anyone over 220 pounds has run since 2003. So that's pretty noteworthy. That's the kind of time that takes you from a 6th-round pick to a 2nd-round pick. So
Correct.
that guy made himself well over $1 million in 4.33 seconds at the combine. And that's why I think he is one of the big winners, if not the biggest winner, as far as moving his draft capital up at the combine.
How well? I can get into this on my other show, Dynasty Pulse on Fantasy Football Plus Network. Go over to that, check it out. We just recorded earlier tonight, and we did combine winners and losers. And I was going to use Isaac Guerendo as my biggest winner, but my partner Mike, he used him, and I was like, okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry to do the same thing to you.
No, that's okay, because there's a difference between, and again, I come from the fantasy football world. I mean, I was a Raiders fan first, and then I got into fantasy football. But content wise, I come from the fantasy analysis world, and Isaac Guerendo popped off the charts. I started hearing about him now, and this is the thing: you want to draft a running back who was the running back one on their team, and Guerendo was the RB2 at Louisville.
Mhm.
He also was in a different program first, and then transferred to Louisville, which makes him old. In the fantasy space, age is the number one indicator of success among running backs, and he's 24 years old. We're in a different time. We're post COVID. We're into the NIL incentivization where it makes more sense to stay in school now. So running backs coming out are going to change the metric that we've been going by in fantasy football and NFL performance in general, because they're all going to be coming out older rather than as third-year breakouts, right? And Guerendo is the poster child for that, because every metric from his athletic score, his 40 time, his 10-yard split, his vert, his 3-cone drill, his shuttle time, his size, everything says this guy is a bell cow running back in the NFL, except his lack of production in school and his age. Now, what that means in the NFL is his draft stock is going to be back half of the draft, day 3, day 4. I am so hyped on the Raiders drafting Isaac Guerendo if he's there. In fantasy football, not quite so much. He's a wait and see. But as far as the Raiders are concerned, if we get him late, he would absolutely be perfect. He's everything that you want in a running back, except for his youth. He has no youth left.
I remember the Raiders drafted a guy really late several years ago who was on the big side and was also blazing fast, and that was Latavius Murray.
Mm-hmm.
And he has carved out a hell of a career for himself with several teams, but was a really good Raider for a long time. And if Isaac Guerendo can come close to what Latavius Murray has been, he'll have a very successful career.
Tay Train, woo woo! I love
Absolutely.
doing that. I've been doing that for 10 years, and I still root for the guy. I hate the Bills just because of because I was alive in the 1990s as a Raider fan. But when I see Tay Train, I root for him.
Well,
Saints, Bills,
I
doesn't
remember
matter.
I remember 51-3. I watched that game. It's a dark day, but we moved past it. the Bills didn't win anything ever, and they probably won't ever, and we'll laugh at them.
Right, but we didn't get a chance because they were such losers.
Of course.
Okay. So yeah, Isaac Guerrero, I love him. He had a great day. There's another guy who I'm surprised that you're not talking about for like what the third week in a row. Uh, Now we talked a few weeks ago about possible like draft targets, and you brought up a kid you were excited about, and we did a mock draft, and he was available at our pick, and we took Braden Fisk. And then last week we talked about him again
Mm-hmm.
because the kid is good, and we said watch him at the combine, check him out. And then he absolutely destroyed the combine.
He did.
So Braden Fisk is a huge combine winner, and
Yeah.
I was messing around before the show with a few mock drafts we'll get into later, but I wound up being able to take Braden Fisk in the second round for the Raiders, who need interior defensive line help. And to make up for that miss on Jalen Carter last year and take somebody as athletic and big as Braden Fisk is, I think that's probably something that we could look into. But we'll talk about that more a little bit later. I'm going to get into one of my winners, and this comes with a loser, actually. My winner is Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Now, hear me out. I'm going to talk again about how a certain metric affects the draft capital of quarterbacks coming in as prospects and um, their performance in the NFL, what we can predict. Okay. And age is the number one marker, running backs and quarterbacks. And J.J. McCarthy is young. My loser is Jane Daniels, and I'll get into that in a second. Not the least reason is because Jane Daniels is old. But Michael Penix is old, and Bo Nix is old. There are only a couple of young quarterbacks in this class, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy. The thing that got me, and the reason why J.J. McCarthy was a winner at the Combine, is because people had questions about his arm. And he went out and he threw a 61-mile-an-hour fastball with a football, which was 1 mile per hour slower than Joe Milton, who we know can chuck the ball Anthony Richardson style 85 yards down the field. J.J. McCarthy has an absolute cannon. Ted Wynn did a little breakdown of J.J. McCarthy. Shout out, Ted. Not necessarily a friend of the channel, but we'd love to see you.
I'm a big fan of him personally. So.
Oh yeah, I since we were with Ted on Silver and Black Pride, low those many years ago, watching him do specifically Raiders analysis before he went to the Athletic and big timed everybody. Huge fan of Ted Wynn. Love to have him as a guest on the show at some point. So if somebody knows Ted, get him this link. We'd love to have him in there. Get in touch with us, and we'll be good. Anyway, he did some breakdowns, and I'm watching footwork, which I know that you're big on, and we talked about Bo Nix. We've talked before about Bo Nix and Michael Penix, both specifically because they're later quarterbacks that we don't have to use the number 13 pick on, and we can take a Nix or a Penix later. And then after that, it gets messy with Spencer Rattler and the kid from Tulane, whatever. But watching Bo Nix and Michael Penix, what has impressed me over the last couple of years is watching tape a couple of years ago and watching their footwork and their inability to move the defense with their eyes, staring down first read receivers. Now, I noticed over this last season that both of them stopped doing that to the extent that they were before. Their footwork was better. They were lined up in their throws, and they were able to look off the defense when they were going through their reads. Well, Ted Wynn showed that J.J. McCarthy is doing that now at 21 years old, which he's doing it better now than those two guys were when they were that same age. So that's what has sold me so far on J.J. McCarthy. The other part of it is that we might have the ability to wait and not have to give anything up to draft JJ at the 13. Whereas with Jaden Daniels, who his performance last year at LSU was otherworldly. He's fantastic. But we're going to have to give up a bunch to move up high enough to take him. He's been rumored to go as high as the 2 or the 3 pick. People are talking about the Patriots wanting to take him at this point. I don't know if I'm willing to invest that in a quarterback who's that old. The other thing is that Jaden Daniels didn't participate. We didn't get to see him throw. I mean, obviously there's enough tape, and tape don't lie. Shout out Marcus. But his size, I've seen him listed at anywhere from 189 pounds to just under 210. And with the way that he plays and how hard-nosed he goes, I don't really think that he's going to last very long. So do we really want to give up a huge package to have to move up to draft Jaden Daniels when we can get J.J. McCarthy a little bit later without having to give up anything, or even fall back and grab Bo Nix or Michael Penix? So Jaden Daniels not measuring at the combine made him a loser in my eyes, and J.J. McCarthy and his performance made him a winner in my eyes.
As far as McCarthy goes, I don't think anybody who watches tape on McCarthy is going to have any reservations about his physical ability or the physical tools. My reservations are that Michigan, for the duration of McCarthy's tenure there, threw about 8 passes a game and ran the ball about 40 billion times a game. And that was successful for them because they built their team that way. But that is not how the NFL was built. The NFL will throw the ball about 60 to 65% of the time. Can J.J. McCarthy make all the throws? I don't freaking know because he didn't do it. I mean, J.J. McCarthy was, some weeks he would be like 17 for 19 and other weeks he'd be like 4 for 16. I mean, he was like the biggest volume chucker Gilbert Arenas quarterback you ever watched in your life. Now, he was never bad, but he was never super great that I ever saw. And I watched a lot of Michigan football the last 3 years. J.J. McCarthy was exactly the kind of quarterback that Michigan needed to succeed. And we saw that because they won the national championship with him and came darn close another time.
Correct.
J.J. McCarthy might as well have been born to play quarterback in Michigan. I'm not sure if J.J. McCarthy is born to play quarterback in the NFL. The good thing about J.J. McCarthy is his presence means that if he falls, the Denver Broncos will surely take him at number 12. He will not get to the Raiders, which means that the Denver Broncos will not have the opportunity to take Bo Nix, and I can still watch football.
Yes. So I will say in McCarthy's defense, yes, he didn't have to make a lot of throws. But what does Antonio Pierce want to do with the Raiders? He wants to be a run-first team. If we re-sign JJ, we have Zamir, and we focus on creating a running game where J.J. McCarthy doesn't necessarily have to go out and throw 45 times a game. Keep him down to 20, 25. He can make the throws. He's got the velocity to do it. He's also, I want to say 3 times more mobile than Aiden O'Connell. He's not 5 times more mobile like Jaden Daniels, but he does make off-platform plays. He scrambles out of the pocket. He has everything that we've seen. Now, we have El Capitan Rafucho. Please let me know in the chat if I'm saying that right. Thinks he's good, but has flaws in his technique and doesn't see us getting him. War Productions. Raiders should get Russell Wilson on the vet minimum, draft a star cornerback in round 1, Sweat in round 2, offensive line, linebacker round 3. Get Joe Milton, who is 6'5", 240 pounds, has a rocket arm, and can run to sit behind Russell Wilson. Now, thank you for the comment, War Productions. I don't know if you were in quick enough, and then he followed that up with draft Milton in round 4. I don't know if you were in here, but I was talking about J.J. McCarthy throwing next to Joe Milton at the combine, and the split between them was 1 mile per hour in the velocity on the football that they were throwing. So if Joe Milton is regarded as the biggest arm in the draft, and J.J. McCarthy, who didn't have to make all those throws, is just a tick behind him as far as velocity is concerned, I'm pretty sure that J.J. McCarthy can make those deep throws too. So I just, again, McCarthy is a huge winner for me. Even if we have to move up to the 6th or 7th pick to take him, I think that's much better than jumping up to the 2 or the 3 to take Daniels. But
I,
we'll see. No, go ahead.
I'm never a big fan of taking the biggest arm in the draft because sometimes you get Josh Allen and sometimes you get Jeff George and Jamarcus Russell. And sometimes you get Kyle Bowler.
Hey,
I want a guy who has.
hashtag go Bears.
You know what? Kyle Bowler was a great college quarterback, but sometimes things don't translate. Joe Milton, Tennessee was not a great team with him.
No.
Tennessee was a much better team with Hendon Hooker.
Sure.
And he'll get his shot one of these days. Joe Milton, I think, is an arm attached to a body. Maybe he'll show something, maybe he won't, but I'm not gonna. That's round 4 is a little too early for me.
Sure. But I don't have a problem with drafting Joe Milton. Again, his age is bad, but when you look at his body compared to Jaden Daniels, if I want a quarterback who's running up the field, I want Joe Milton carrying the ball, not necessarily Jaden Daniels. Again, I love Jaden Daniels. I'm not slandering Jaden Daniels. I just don't know if he's worth it, considering what else we can have that's close or other parts of the team building. Blah blah blah. Okay, we have quote from T Severe. Thank you for joining. That's throwing in a straight line, correct. When the wide receivers were running 9 routes, he didn't have near the arm. He's a 1-speed pitcher, no touch, poor instincts, and wasn't asked to or couldn't carry a college offense. I get that. I understand that. The thing is, what we're talking about is prospects. And if you have somebody who has the size, and JJ McCarthy got measured and his size was fine, and he has some of the intangibles like power in his arm, he can show that he can do those things. I've seen him make NFL throws. Watch the Ted Wynn video from today. Watch a lot of the tape on McCarthy. He can make the throws at the sidelines on out routes. He has really good instincts in opening up receivers and anticipating. I think that because there's not 45 attempts per game tape on him, people seem to think that there's a lot that he can't do, but that was just the nature of that offense. And I think that once he gets to the NFL and he's tasked to do some of those things, he's going to be able to. Athleticism carries over, and he seems, at least to me, to be athletic enough. But that's debate. We got pros, we got cons, we got people for, we got people against, and that's what we're here for. I want to hear all of your comments. I want you to argue with me in the chat. That's what we're doing, because we're all Raider Nation, baby. All right. Anybody else that you saw at the Combine that made you go,
Joe Alt is freaking huge. Colton Miller, we have at left tackle. He's a big guy. Joe Alt is just as big. He's 6'8". He's like 5,000 pounds. The dude's a mountain of a man. I don't think he'll last to the Raiders. I think he'll probably end up going to Tennessee or, some maybe the Giants would take him. The Giants always need offensive line help, even though they've invested more draft capital in offensive line than any other team in the last 10 years. They still suck on offensive line. So it wouldn't surprise me if they took him. But someone's going to get a real good player in Joe Alt. Spencer Rattler was good. He showed a lot of promise. I don't necessarily think he'll be super great in the NFL. I think he's clearly shown some growth since he was, in high school, had a Netflix show about himself, was at Oklahoma. Yeah. It's kind of a prima donna, but he went to South Carolina and really put his head down, which is good for him. At the Senior Bowl, he was pretty darn good, a little short of fantastic, but he was pretty darn good. So I think he's a 2nd or 3rd round prospect. Terrion Arnold was just amazing. There were a lot of really good defensive backs at the Combine. But the guys we thought were going to be good were good. The kid from Toledo, whose name escapes me at the moment, was really good. But I do have a few losers here I would like to talk about for a moment.
But before we get to that, we'll get to that list. We have arguing in the comments, and I'm here for it.
All right.
That's what we're here for. T Severe. Once again, saw the Ted Wynn video. There wasn't one throw that showed anticipation. Wrong. I'm going to push back on that, buddy. There was a throw in the middle, towards the middle and second half of the video, where he looks the wide receiver open as the wide receiver is crossing the linebacker. He waits for the guy is being covered. He waits for the guy to cross the linebacker, anticipates the throw, gets it over. There was another one that was a deep out down the left sideline that he hit. He can make those throws. But Quinyon Mitchell, he wanted to talk about.
There we go. That's the guy.
CB1 since the Senior Bowl, exclamation point, checked every box, absolutely. Which leads us to Ivan the Great's question. Besides quarterback, what position or player would you guys like drafted in round one? And we were talking about that a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily want to waste the 13th pick or trade up for something higher to get a quarterback. I'm okay with Michael Penix or Bo Nix a little bit later and getting somebody with that 13th pick, or moving up for Joe Alt or something. Stick around because we're going to be talking mock drafts a little bit later, and I have answers to that question. So thank you, Ivan the Great, for jumping in.
Yeah, I do too.
and we will get to that. Okay, your losers. Hit me.
All right, the first one. Well, when I was looking at mock drafts for this year, last year, a couple years ago, the one guy who was consistently in the top three was Kool-Aid McKinstry, a cornerback from Alabama, and he did not participate in this combine with a foot injury. He should be ready for the start of the season and might even be ready for his pro day. But there were so many good defensive backs in this combine for him to not participate, for him to have a very untimely injury that's not necessarily his fault at all. It's just bad for him. He didn't do anything wrong. It's just that there's so much stiff competition. He'll probably slide down into the early to mid second round, and that injury will probably cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is just unfortunate. He's a really, really good player. The second loser I have is a guy I really like and I've talked about a lot on this particular podcast, and that's Bucky Irving, the running back from Oregon. He ran a 4.55 40, which is not super great. But the thing about Bucky Irving is he has never been the fastest guy, even on Oregon. Oregon always had backs who are faster than him. The thing about Bucky Irving is he moves side to side so well you can't tackle him. And so even if he's not super fast, he will still, bust a 20-yard run. But unfortunately, the NFL works in such a way where, just like Guarendo, who I talked about earlier, moved himself from the 6th to the 2nd round, I think that particular time could move Bucky Irving from the 2nd or 3rd round to maybe 4th through 6th round. So that's unfortunate for him, although I think that particular time makes him a steal for anybody who gets him anywhere past the end of the 2nd round. So it'll cost him a bunch of money, but it's good for the team that gets him. And the last loser, as I would like to mention, is Kalen King, the cornerback out of Penn State. He ran a 4.61, which is not good. There were so many much, much faster cornerbacks in the combine. Now, Kalen King has been a really, really good cornerback for Penn State for a long time. He had a sophomore season, which was absolutely fantastic, which put him in first-round consideration. But you cannot be a cornerback in the NFL and run a 4.61. You're just not going to be able to stay with all these ridiculous whiteouts, just freak monster athletes that we have in the league these days. Kalen King, might not even be in the top 4 rounds of this draft. He might have fallen to the 5th or 6th. So I just think he cost himself so much money with a really, really awful combine. And it's bad. It's too bad for him because he's a really good player.
And that's the thing. There are a couple of guys every year who can skip the combine. Caleb Williams goes in and gets measured, doesn't do any drills. We don't know his 40 time. We don't know like what he could have done when the wide receivers were doing their drills, but we know how big he is, and that's all fine and good. Malik Neighbors still going to be like a top 10 wide receiver pick. Didn't participate. Marvin Harrison Jr., same thing. He's the wide receiver 1 in the class, and skipping out on the combine stuff didn't really hurt him. But there are guys that you have to go show something. Jaden Daniels is one of them. Kool-Aid McKinstry is another. The first time that I ever talked about anything in this draft, what I wanted to do was take Kool-Aid McKinstry with the 13th pick. And now that is, I mean, that was 5 or 6 talkings ago. So
Sure.
I'm definitely out on that now. One guy who is another winner that we've talked about before is your dude Mike Sanderstill, the cornerback from Michigan.
Mm.
His relative athletic score is close to 10, which is pretty remarkable. So I wanted to throw that guy in there. I also had Bucky Irving as a combine loser, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a Raiders loser. He could very easily be a Raiders winner because we don't really need anything from the running back position as long as we bring Jacobs back, other than getting that third down back. And I think that regardless of how fast Bucky Irving is, I think he can still do that job. He's got enough wiggle. Now, there are some metrics tracking that show one of the least important things for running backs with their NFL production is 40 time. So guys like Audric Estime and Braylon Allen didn't run, but Audric Estime ran a really slow time. There was another guy that ran a really slow time. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about Bucky's 40 time. Bucky is young. That's number one. And as far as speed goes, all that does is affect your draft capital. So the faster the 40 time at running back, the higher you get drafted, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to NFL production. So as much as it hurt to watch Bucky Irving, that has been like a favorite on this show for the last few weeks, as much as it hurt to watch his performance, it doesn't mean that we can't take him. It just means we get him at a better value in the 4th round or the 5th round or whatever. Bring Bucky on board. Let's go.
There is nothing that Amir Abdullah can do that Bucky Irving can't do much better.
No, and Abdullah's gone anyway. Brandon Bolden too. And I agree with T. Severe one more time. If we want Penix, we have to upgrade right tackle because he's a southpaw and his free agent class at tackle is putrid. It will have to be through the draft or hoping for the development of Mumford, the emergence of Wagner. I agree, and that's why I want Fashanu. Take Fashanu at 13, and then take Penix later on, and we're good. Because it just flips the blind side. So I definitely agree with that. All right, so let's get into some of these free. Well, let's get into the mock drafts real quick. But first, we gotta do some business. What up, nation? The 2023 NFL season is over, but fantasy football season never stops. You can already draft for the 2024 season on Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy football. The Big Board is a pre-NFL draft fantasy football contest with all the incoming rookies in the players pool, even the ones the Raiders haven't drafted yet. Draft your team in 20 rounds, and that's it. You leave it alone, set it and forget it. In best ball format, you get the optimal score to fill your starting lineup. A great way to get your dynasty startup draft fix without any league management at all. It's only $10 to enter, and over $2 million in prizes are up for grabs. How much of that do you want? Be sure to sign up for Underdog with promo code UNDROPPABLE. That's UNDROPPABLE, and you'll get your first deposit matched up to $100. You put in $100, that's 10 leagues. We will give you 100 more. Sign up today. All right, and Tyler and I,
my internet cut out there for about 5 to 10 seconds, and it got rid of me. So I am back now. We're good.
Luckily, it was during the commercial. And Tyler, sorry, at Raider Damas, and I were talking about best ball a little bit earlier. And how much of that $2 million do you want? I want a large piece of it, and $100 matched, $200 worth of undroppable teams. You can get a big piece of that. I would like that very much. Thank you. All right, so let's get into some of these mock drafts. I won't necessarily put them up on the board, but I just want to talk about them for a second. The first one that I did I didn't take a quarterback. So, and this one scared me because uh, with the position of our pick, it makes it so you either need to trade up or you need to wait. And then maybe if you wait, those guys are gone. So I took Penn State offensive tackle Olumiwa Fashanu. I just call him Fashanu. I took him with the 13th pick, and then the only quarterbacks left later on, Nix and Penix went before the 44, and it was just Rattler and the Tulane guy, and
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
No,
Braden
that's
Fisk
how
in
it's going to
the
be.
Braden Fisk in the second, Sanders still in the third, and in the fourth, and this was perfect. He was somebody that we should have talked about as a combine winner, but Wisconsin center Tanner Bortolone.
Oh, you mean the guy I wanted to draft a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah,
That
dude
that,
is
that went like a couple of picks before we got to him.
yes.
Yeah,
That
yeah, he was a combine winner. That dude is super ridiculously athletic. I think he had like the second best 40 time for interior offensive lineman. I mean,
six
that guy's a
four three oh
monster.
three, and his relative athletic score was 9.79 out of
That guy's a
10. It's
beast.
ridiculous. And if we get him at the four, I mean, we already know that Andre James is out. It's just a question of do we sign a left guard and move Parham over to center? Blah blah blah. Do we sign a center? What are we going to do? But if we could get Tanner Bortolone in the fourth round, that would be awesome. And then Sanders still athletic as hell. In the third round, he had a relative athletic score of 834. He's only 5'9", 182 pounds. He's not a very big guy, but he's physical. He's competitive. He plays bigger than he is. He's tenacious. So he is technical. He's a technical cornerback. So he's not really going to get beat a whole lot based on technique. He might get out jumped, but let him travel, put him on smaller receivers, that kind of thing.
He will be in the vicinity of the ball at all times, and he will make more plays than plays are made upon him. Like I said, I watched a lot of Michigan football over the last 3 years, and Mike Sainristil is, I mean, outside of Corum and McCarthy, Mike Sainristil was their best player. And that's not an exaggeration. The Wolverines had studs everywhere on defense. Mike Sainristil was easily their best defensive player for the entirety of basically the Harbaugh regime in
Yeah.
in Michigan. And I would hope the Raiders would be able to get him in the third round. He might go before that. But I would be ecstatic if Sainristil was around for the Raiders to take.
And if there's one thing that we know as Raider fans is if your college team wins a national championship, your team's going to get rated. Um, I didn't mean that as a pun. I just meant like Clemson, Alabama, like uh, Raiders like taking national champions. Ivan the Great says, I'd rather try and trade up for a quarterback like they like instead of settling with whatever quarterbacks are left. And I fully agree with that to a certain extent. I am old. I'm an old person. I am of the school that drafts a quarterback to hold a clipboard for 3 or 4 years, build your team around the offensive line, and sign defensive tackles, sign free agents to put together your trenches. That's the way that you build a team. So I have no problem if we take an offensive lineman or a speed skill position guy at the cornerback position with the 13th pick, and then wait to try and get somebody later. And roll with Aiden O'Connell. That's controversy, baby. That's what we're here for. Fire up those comments. Tell me how wrong I am about Aiden O'Connell. I have no problem with him being our starting quarterback next year. Do I have people that I'd prefer? I would like Jaden Daniels over Aiden O'Connell. I would like JJ McCarthy over Aiden O'Connell. But if it means building a great team around a quarterback who does just enough, I think Aiden O'Connell can be that guy that does just enough and let everybody else cook. All right. And so that was the first mock draft I did. The second mock draft I did, McCarthy fell to 13. I took Braden Fisk. Damn it, sorry. I took Braden Fisk again in the second round. I think that's a fantastic pick for us. Um, the dude is a monster. If he's there at 44, he's a smash, smash, smash. And then, like we did the first time you and I did a mock draft, Tavondre Sweat was there in the third round. So we doubled up on that defensive interior for those first three picks. I only did a three round on that one for Player Profiler. And PFF graded me a B on the McCarthy pick, A minus on the two defensive interior. So I kind of liked that. What do you think about Tavondre Sweat?
I am a huge fan of him. If there's one thing I like in football, it's big, giant, fat guys in the middle of the defensive line. The 2000 Ravens won a Super Bowl because of that. They had two of those guys. There are a lot of really, really good players in the league right now who are more or less that. The Packers had success with Gilbert Brown. That's just an archetype that I think makes football better. I think if you can plug up the defensive line and stop the run, then you are much more likely to win in general as a franchise. And taking a guy like that shows that you are a winning franchise. The Eagles do this almost every year. And the Eagles have been a winning franchise for a very long time. The Ravens do this almost every year. And the Ravens have been a winning franchise for a long time. The Raiders don't do this. The Raiders don't draft, star defensive tackles and really haven't since Darrell Russell. And it's been absolutely to the detriment of the team. I think when you look at the teams who are successful in the long term, they draft, 2 or 3 linemen every year. They don't worry about, we already have a guy there. You can move people around. There's a thing called versatility. But having 2 giant-ass defensive tackles like the Eagles have right now will help you win more often than not. I mean, it's basic football philosophy that I've disagreed with the Raiders for a very long time. And I think to get back to their winning ways, they absolutely have to have 3 or 4 guys like this. And I think you can get guys like that in free agency. I think this year of all years you can draft them. The Raiders made the mistake of not drafting a guy like that last year when they could have. The Eagles did draft him, which is why the Eagles are in the playoffs and the Raiders were not. But you can say that sort of thing every year because the same teams do the same stuff every single year. And the Raiders just have their head in their ass every year when they go to the draft. And it's just depressing to see. But this is a new year. This is a new regime. This is a new day.
Yep.
This is a new opportunity to make the right choices, and I hope they do.
Tom Telesco will be your savior, Tyler. And where are you, Jelly Ellis? Come on back, big guy. Okay, so over at sportsinfosolutions.com, not a sponsor, and I'm not giving them a free plug. I just want to let you guys know where to find this. They broke down the metrics for all of the correlations of combine measurements, how they relate to NFL performance. And I talked about it on this live stream last week, and I'm going to talk about it again. Run defense total points, NFL performance. The number one corollary to run defense among defensive linemen is weight. So, yeah, the bigger the guy, the better the performance is going to be. You don't necessarily need in a 4-down lineman situation against the run with a big run-stopping linebacker behind him. You don't really need agile guys who are going to get between the guard and the center, whatever. You don't need that. You just need guys to plug holes. And if we can get a 350-pound guy to do that, it's fine.
When we think about the best defense of all time, generally, what defense would we think of when we would think about that?
99-2000 Ravens.
Okay, and they had 2, really good defensive tackles. We would also
that we don't talk about because they're cheaters.
We don't talk about. Well, one of them is fine. The other one is not so fine. The other one is riding in hell at the moment. But we also think of the '85 Bears, who had 2 guys that we remember to this day. I don't remember who their safeties and corners were. I remember
Dave Durison and sorry.
Okay, well, you're older than me, so.
Right.
But I remember Mike Singletary and William the Refrigerator Perry. Mm-hmm. Those 2 guys, middle linebacker, defensive tackle. Right. And statistically, the best defense of all time is not the 2000 Ravens; it's the 1990 Eagles. And the 1990 Eagles had Reggie White as a defensive end, and in the middle they had Jerome Brown, who was a fantastic defensive tackle. Your defense has to start in the middle. It's like in baseball, you want your defense good up the middle with your shortstop, second baseman, center fielder. And in football, it's pretty much the same thing. You want a good middle linebacker who could stop the run, and you want a good defensive set of defensive tackles who could stop the run. One isn't enough. You need 2 or 3.
True. That, yeah, and I've always been a huge believer of that. And the way that you build a defensive line on the interior is you sign big ones in free agency, and then you bring in young guys with late picks in the draft and feed them for 3 or 4 years. T. Severe, yeah. I wish we would have drafted Carter. That would have opened up our ability to draft a guy like Latu if he falls. I agree with that. But I have it on good authority from co-host Kenny King Jr. Don't sleep on Tyree Wilson. He's going to have a breakout year, and
I'm hopeful he's right about that.
I'm here for it because we need offensive linemen to be taken up to give Max and Kuntz time to cook. Ivan the Great, one more really good point. Free agency will play a big part for the draft. There's a lot of talent out there. I definitely agree. And then one more from him. It's definitely O'Connell's job to lose. The fan of me wants to see this chemistry AP will have with Daniels. I can't remember the last time we had a duo like that with so much history together. I can, and that's Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. So we shall see. And then the last mock draft I did over at NFLDraftBuzz.com, which is the best looking one, and wound up with McCarthy at 13, Braden Fisk at 44. Again, I went with Cooper Beebe at the 3rd round pick, number 77, and Tanner Bortolini. So I definitely have my guys that keep popping up every time I see them. I'm like, ooh, I like that guy, and I pick him. So there is that. All right, and Severe once again. It was an entirely different league. No longer 5 yards in a cloud of dust. Best recent defenses line left. What, I don't know what that sentence is.
Best
recent defense is the law.
That's the Legion of Boom. That's the Seattle
Legion
defense.
Oh, I was thinking Legion of Doom. Best D-line was Bennett.
Those are the Road Warriors, who are the former WCW and WWF tag team champions of the world.
Right, but that's Legion of Boom. I would have gotten it. Otherwise, I think of Legion of Doom. Okay, and
he's not wrong, but the league ebbs and flows. It goes back and forth. Every 10 years from emphasizing the run to emphasizing the pass. I really just think we're going back to the point in time where big, giant, nasty, hulking defensive tackles are the way to go. I really do.
We need to get to the quarterback because there's so much more emphasis on the passing game that you need to be able to get there. And if teams are going to run 4 wide, we need blitzing safeties. We need blitzing linebackers. We need edge rushers that are going to get off. We need 3 tech defensive linemen that are going to be able to beat their man and get home. And that's what the Raiders are building. That's what Patrick Graham does. I think it's the blueprint for this Raiders defense. But there are running downs, and on those running downs, you need those big nasties to get in there and fill up space and let Spillane. In my earlier podcast, I called Zamir Zaire. So forgive me.
Are we the 92 Lions with Chris Spielman at the middle linebacker there?
Big Train Spillane. That's what I meant. Spillane, or like Denzel Perryman a couple years ago, like let them work against the run and with the big nasties, and we're good.
The main thing I would like the Raiders to avoid is to give the quarterback the opportunity to step up in the pocket and get away from Max Crosby. Because if the quarterback steps up in the pocket, he will usually have the opportunity to run just straight forward a long way, because most teams will have tight ends, running here, running there, running seam routes, running crossing routes. And the middle linebacker is just, he can't be there anymore. He can't just, sit there. So the quarterback, if he's getting away from our fantastic edge rushers, I don't want him to be able to just walk forward and evade pressure. I want somebody there who will actually be afraid of. So I think that is the other benefit of having giant defensive tackles, is the quarterback can't just, step up like Dan Marino used to do all the time.
Yeah, and like some opponents that we see that do that against us sometimes, which is not great.
Well, they're holding if they do it against us.
That's true. Strike Vader is in the chat once again. Thank you for coming in again. I think I saw you last week. Andy Reid uses honey barbecue cologne. Yes. I do want to ask Strike Vader for permission for Raider Damas to use that in an upcoming Raider Damas article. Andy Reid uses honey barbecue
Andy
cologne.
Reid's blood type is marinara.
Yes, that's my favorite. On my other show, I have Tyler on there, and I'm listing all of these superlatives that he gave in his Raider Damas column, and I'm just dead, just dying. It's some of the best writing that's out there. So I'm glad he's part of the show. What are your thoughts on Chris Jenkins?
Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle from Michigan. The defensive line from Michigan as a whole was really, really good. But Chris Jenkins is a really big part of that. He would collapse the pocket pretty regularly. He would stuff the run pretty regularly. I think he's a really solid player. I don't think he's like, first round material. I don't think he's super elite or super special. But he's the guy, if you want to have a good defense, you got to have 4 or 5 guys about as good as Chris Jenkins. I think he'd be a fantastic addition to the Raiders or any team, really. I think he's really, really good.
Yeah, and when we're talking about defensive interior, we're not talking about guys. I mean, you have specific players like Jalen Carter who wind up getting taken in the first round. I don't think Chris Jenkins is the big body guy that we've been talking about. I think he's more of a 3-tech like Tyree Wilson, but not quite as long. He's not quite 300 pounds. I like him, and he's got a motor. So at a certain point, we've seen what that can do in the NFL. Jesus, come on. All right. Andy Reid is a strong advocate of lemon teriyaki antiperspirant, but that clashes with the honey barbecue. So
it does. It's not even the same thing, man. Come on.
Different days. The antiperspirant for game days. The honey barbecue cologne for when he steps out with the lady on a walrus dinner night. Okay. And if I haven't said it earlier, fuck the Chiefs. Let's just throw that out there. All right. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to talk free agent targets, and I'm going to bring up another one. I don't remember if I did it here or on my other show, but we've been talking about defensive interiors. So the most Raider free agent signing that we could possibly have this offseason, Fletcher Cox to Las Vegas. Let's go!
I think there are 4 or 5 defensive tackles that the Raiders should be interested in. I think 1A and 1B and 1C are Chris Jones. I don't think there should be a question about that. The Chiefs declined to franchise tag Chris Jones, which makes him, on the open market. And I think if you want to single-handedly cripple the Kansas City Chiefs and make yourself a playoff contender in one fell swoop, you give Chris Jones as much money as he could possibly imagine. Now, $20 million is probably about the going rate for Chris Jones. I would go considerably more than that if that's what he wants. If he comes into the building, do not let that man leave. I think he is of the utmost importance to the Raiders' future and their present, is to get that man in silver and black immediately. Now, fortunately for the Raiders, if Chris Jones declines for whatever reason to join the Las Vegas Raiders, there are other options. Christian Wilkins is one. Christian Wilkins is, I recall, 24 years old. and already is one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL. Unfortunately, the Ravens did tag Justin Matabuki. They're not going to let him go, and they shouldn't,
Right.
because he's a fantastic player. But Christian Wilkins was not tagged, and will be free to sign with whoever he wishes. And the third option would be Leonard Williams, who grew up a Raider fan, would probably love to join the Raiders, would probably be half as expensive as Chris Jones, if not less than half as expensive as Chris Jones. Isn't quite as good as Chris Jones is, nor does he currently play for the Chiefs, so he wouldn't, destroy them like not having Chris Jones would. If we recall, in week 1 of last year, the Kansas City Chiefs at home without Chris Jones and without Travis Kelce lost to the Detroit Lions, which was one of the greatest days of my life. And I
not
think
as good as Christmas, though.
Not quite as good, but it was really, really enjoyable to watch that game and to watch the Chiefs defense be absolute garbage without Chris Jones. I want to see a full season of that. I want to see the Raiders defense be 100% elite with Chris Jones in the middle, and I want to see the Chiefs completely fall apart without Chris Jones in the middle. I want to see that. If I don't see that, sign Leonard Williams and draft a kid. There's plenty of good defensive tackles in this draft. You can get the kid from Baylor in maybe the 6th round, and he would be awesome. But I think Chris Jones is the top option, and they should throw the moon at him.
So what are you thinking? Like $60 million?
That's like, does Patrick Mahomes make $60 million? I mean, that's a lot of money.
I'm talking about the length of the contract, not Pat Mahomes makes like $50 million a year.
Jesus.
I'm talking about 2 or 3 years for $60 million. $20 million a year.
I would pay Chris Jones as much as the New York Mets would pay a pitcher. I would give him a 3-year deal.
$20 million a year.
I would give him a 3-year deal at about $63 to $65 million.
Okay, and Christian Wilkins is 28, by the way. So just
28. Okay.
Yeah. And
I read that wrong.
Just go to the Google machine. I mean, it stands to reason with free agency after the 5-year contract and everything. Chris Jones projected contract, average annual value of 28.4. He turns 30 in July. He's projected to sign a 3-year deal worth about $85 million. So I was way off on that.
Okay. Well, in that case, I would go up to $90 million for a 3-year contract for Chris Jones. The Raiders have the money. The Raiders' payroll is not at issue here, and there's no reason
Jimmy
to have
Garoppolo.
the money. There's no reason to have all that money if you're not going to spend it. That's what money is for.
Correct.
It's for spending. And that's what a salary cap is for. Listen, every NFL team gets a giant, $200 million check from the league simply for existing every single year. Before any team in the NFL lifts a finger to do anything, to wipe their own butts, they have enough for 75% of their payroll before they do anything, before merch, before tickets, before TV rights, before anything. They have plenty of money. There's no reason not to spend that money. There's no reason not to go out and improve yourself. There's no reason not to go out and get the absolute best players you possibly can. There's no reason for any team in any professional sport, looking at you, Pittsburgh Pirates, to be cheap. None whatsoever. Not in the world we live in today. Not in the world we live in today.
Oh, I can't wait for Paul Skeens. Now, I always used to say it's not my money, and then I started paying $250, $300 a year for Sunday ticket.
I just bought a $40 hat. It's my fucking money.
Yes. No, I agree. It is our money. So spend it all. Spend it on Chris Jones. We had a certain salary cap number that was pretty nice. We were in really good shape. And then the NFL said, nope, you get more. And then Jimmy Garoppolo popped dirty, and we got even more. So
hey, we got $80 million burning a hole in our pocket. Bring me Chris Jones on a platter.
Spend it all. All right. Sheesh. Solid D's tackle and a Patrick Queen.
I agree.
I
agree. Patrick Queen is awesome. Love that man. Bring him in. He should have been the pick anyway.
Hashtag Go Tigers with an EAUX. And I hope we're not retaining Bilal Extra Pickles Nichols. I love extra pickles. In and out, that's my jam. 3 tiers of onion. I do chopped raw, chopped grilled, and whole grilled on my double-double with extra pickles. So I'm good with Bilal.
If you're not having a 4x4, are you at In-N-Out? Like for real?
So I can't do 4x4s anymore. Blame it on the Mounjaro.
Oh
Um,
man,
yeah, my appetite is not
I
what it
do.
used to be, but I lost 70 pounds, 60 pounds, so
I
that's
do the
good.
4x4 animal style with the well done fries, man. That's the stuff.
I might be able to get away with it if it's a Flying Dutchman, but I do like the buns. And while we're at it, let's talk about In-N-Out fries because I'm not a hater. I love them. I get them extra well done, and they taste like picnic shoestring potatoes out of the can,
They
and
do.
I'm here for that. Um,
I'm not ashamed to say In-N-Out fries are easily the worst fast food fries in all of fast fooddom, and it's not particularly close. But I still love them just because In-N-Out is. I don't go there often because I don't live on the West Coast anymore. But going to In-N-Out is such an emotional experience for me that I will gobble them down no matter how awful they are. Uh, but the burgers are so good at In-N-Out; it makes up for whatever other garbage they have.
right. I love them. Bilal, I've talked about him on the show before. I am in favor of re-signing him. I like continuity. He's a year younger than Christian Wilkins, and he's 313 pounds, so he is a big body dude. Um, Let me look at Christian Wilkins one more time.
I
And
like fat guy touchdowns, so I would be in favor of bringing back John Jenkins instead.
yeah, well, I mean, William Perry's not dead. I think we can bring him back. So yeah, Bilal
Pretty
is
sure he is dead though.
let me let me throw this out there. I am not in any way comparing the abilities of Christian Wilkins and Bilal Nichols. I know that Christian Wilkins is a much superior NFL player than Bilal Nichols. But when we're looking at things like age, Bilal's a little younger. His weight, he's a little bit bigger. So I'm not totally out on bringing back Bilal, especially if we bring Chris Jones in as well. We got comments, and I love it. Burn them up.
All
Uh,
right.
well, first of all, this one, facts. Spend the damn money, right? I mean,
100%.
it's not like they're going into like a savings account. We all get dividends.
You can't take it with you, man. I mean, maybe
No,
it rolls over, but you can't. Like, why not? Why not?
but maybe Al did, and that's why Mark is so broke all the time. Okay, teams cap issues. The Chargers are over 20 million in cap space, second worst in the NFL. Is that behind the Saints?
The Saints
So,
do some voodoo devil magic to get rid of their cap problems every year, just like the Niners did in the early '90s until it caught up to them. Eddie DiBartolo got thrown in jail for that shit. And all the other fraud he committed. But the Chargers are just the Saints without a wizard at their cap GM position. The Chargers are going to have to pay for that a lot sooner than the Saints
mhm.
will because the Saints are experts at kicking the can. Everybody makes a big deal. Oh, Saints are $160 trillion over the cap this year. It doesn't matter. The salary cap is a myth. You can get around it if you want to. The Saints will pay off the Catholic Church until the church buys the NFL and gets rid of the salary cap as a principle. It
True.
doesn't matter. And the Chargers will eventually have to do the same thing. Hopefully, they cut their entire team before they do so. Because if there's one thing we don't want the Chargers to have, it's talent. Because the Chargers are the greatest team in the entire NFL outside of the Bills and Oilers at wasting the careers of really, really good players.
I mean, they've had talent, and let me start by saying fuck the Chargers. But it's always nice for the Chargers to get all of the off-season steam and preseason hype that they get, and still be looking up at the silver and black.
Warren
Fuck
Moon
you.
deserved better. He should have
All
won
right,
4 Super Bowls.
yeah, and Khalil Mack deserved better, and yeah, I prefer a guy like Big Cat on a cheaper deal, still productive and played very well in Graham's defense. That's true. Also leaves space to re-sign Kuntz, extend Spillane, and still be players in FA. I don't think that we're in any cap trouble. Um,
I don't want to hear people talk about, oh, well, this got a cheaper deal. We have $80 million to spend. We need to
yeah,
spend it. I don't want to be thrifty. That's how you become mediocre. Spend the fucking money.
right. But you can spend money a lot on some people, and then also bring
Well,
in
I mean,
cheaper
you can be
people.
responsible, but if you have elite players available, you pay them elite money. That's how it goes.
Right. 142 million in cap space between Keenan, Mike, Mac, and Bosa. That's eaten up. And Mac or Bosa goes this year. They're
Well, I
next
will
week.
say, in the Chargers' defense, I will defend the Chargers here. This is a problem that you have when you draft really well for a really long time. You have players eventually you have to pay them. The
Right.
problem is when you hold on to all these players for 8 or 9 years and you give them all giant contracts and you don't have any depth behind them, then it catches up to you, which is exactly what the Chargers have done. But the Chargers drafted themselves into this problem, which I hope is what the Raiders will do eventually, but I hope the Raiders will be a little more responsible about it.
And, you can give a team a Tom Telesco, but if you pair that Tom Telesco with an Anthony Lynn or a Brandon Staley, you're not going to have a good time.
Coaching is everything. Look at the Giants. I mean, like I said, the Giants have spent more draft capital on their offensive line than any team in the last decade, and their offensive line still sucks. Why? Coaching. So they brought in the guy for the Raiders who turned absolute garbage into a really good offensive line. So we'll see how it works. But coaching is freaking everything in the NFL.
Now they just need a quarterback, and we've got a coach. All right, let's get back to In and Out real quick. Three by three. That's a big one with the peppers. I like to go into the restaurant and like get the peppers off the thing and eat them plain, not on the burger. But I still like them. Animal style fries, hold the onions, dude. I'm telling you, there's this nuance of onion layering that you can do at In and Out that is absolutely ridiculous. And then T Severe. Wiener Schnitzel has much worse fries. You know what? I got a story about Wiener Schnitzel. I got off work one night and I was driving pizza in Woodland, and on my way back, I went to Wiener Schnitzel and I just got like a Polish sandwich, which is my favorite thing there, whatever, and some fries. And I started like eating the fries while I'm driving home. It's like a 10-mile drive. And I swear to God, those Wiener Schnitzel fries were the best fast food fries I've ever had. I don't know if it's the way they salted them. I don't know if it's how fresh they were. I don't understand it. And it was singular and it's never happened again. But that one order of Wiener Schnitzel fries, best fast food fries I've ever had.
Some teenager blessed you that day. They made some really awesome fries, and they've
I
never
don't
done
know.
it again.
Maybe
The,
like the drive-through girl kissed it. I don't know.
the best fries, though, were McDonald's when they still used the beef tallow to cook the fries
Of
in.
course.
Since they started to go all healthy in the last 15 years, the fries have been not quite as good.
Shout out to our parent platform, The Undroppables. Look for the future for Chef's Corner, which we've got like 10 guys on The Undroppables, and we're all cooks. Nothing beats duck fat fries. But you have to make those at home because no fast food place is doing that. We are having trouble in the mountains with Tyler. So hopefully he gets back. I'm going to take him out real quick and address some of these things. Adam Butler, great high energy defensive tackle rotational piece. I like Adam Butler. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not freezing, guys. Just run into the Google machine. But yeah, I love Adam Butler. I don't have a problem with retaining him or Bilal Nichols. Good point. Strike Vader. A ton of bargain bin pieces isn't cutting it. Yeah, I think that's what we're all kind of agreeing with. And
Sorry
he's
about
back.
sorry about that. It cut out again on me. I'm not sure
No
why it did
worries.
that.
You live in the mountains, so
I do. And I was saying the best fries for my money are Jack in the Box, but that's just personal preference. You may or may not agree. I can see you're laughing at me, so I'm
no.
going to guess you don't.
I'm laughing at the comment. The big foot tape of Wiener Schnitzel fries. This is a Pruder film. All right, looking at wide receivers. No, I love Brendan Rice. Over at Player Profiler, where I write news, I do news blurbs on. So if you like, go to playerprofiler.com, go to their like type in player search. When that profile of the player comes up, go to the news and media link underneath the player, and anybody who is AFC West, anybody who's Raiders specifically, I wrote those blurbs. Anybody who's Chargers, I wrote those blurbs. Some of the Broncos, some of the Chiefs for a while, but we have my partner Mike is doing that too. So, but any of the Raiders, like I'm the one writing that stuff. There's some pretty good stuff, like making fun of Jimmy getting popped dirty and that kind of thing. I invite you guys to go check that stuff out. But my point was, I got to write up Brendan Rice after the combine, and he had a really good combine. And I had been talking him up on my Dynasty Fantasy Football show before as somebody that I was watching at the combine. I love him as a third round pick. I think he would fit perfect in the Raiders system. Um, he would be a great complement to Jacoby Myers and just be a really good wide receiver 2-3 that would complement when we replace Devontae Adams at the wide receiver 1 position. Yeah, and he's the son of a former Raider legend, so I'll never be mad about that. All right. We're at an hour 20. This was a long show, and I love it. I thank everybody for jumping into the chat. I live for this. Let's get it going every week. Every week, Thursday night, 8 o'clock Pacific. Sorry, 11 o'clock East Coast people. I'll run the show back tomorrow over on Twitter at BigBonedFFB is where you can find me. I also post in the Raiders Twitter, and I do want to give a shout out to the co-hosts that weren't in tonight, Kenny King Jr. and Marcus Johnson. And we did talk about Christian Wilkins and Chris Jones. So anybody that wants to watch a good breakdown of both of those guys, go to the Tape Don't Lie channel on YouTube. Matt Holder and Marcus were talking about Christian Wilkins today, and a couple weeks ago they did Chris Jones. They're both pretty good. So yeah, subscribe, hit the bell so it notifies you when I'm dropping episodes. I've got some cool things coming up, some special non-live streams, but the live stream is going to be every Thursday night at 8 o'clock, and I'm here for your comments. That's what gets the algorithm going. I love if you guys can like take this, link it, and share it all around Raider Nation. Get this show going, and we'll have Kenny King, we'll have Marcus Johnson back. Those guys are absolute ballers. I've got some other stuff cooking up with Undroppables guys. We have 2 really good Raiders content creators at the Undroppables. They'll both be jumping into the pod, whether it's the live stream or something I do in the middle. Tyler is really good about being here every week. My boy KTG38, Know the Game 38 on Twitter. You might have seen him. He's going to come in every once in a while. So just more and more and more as we get through free agency, we get through the NFL draft, we get into rookie camp. I will be here for you. Hopefully you're here for me. Ivan the Great posts in the Raiders community on Twitter. I do. That's every time I do the show, I do post in Raiders Twitter that I'm coming up. You can go back through the pod, see, go to Fantasy Burn. That's one of my channels, and I do have a really good interview with Kenny King that went quite a while. So a lot of good stuff coming up this season. This is a new endeavor that the Undroppables, which is a fantasy-based website, is coming up with. We're moving to a separate part of the Undroppables that is all team individually based. So my partner at Player Profiler and the Dynasty Pulse, Mike Lindbergh, he does the Chiefs. We've got Johnny Tuma from Player Profiler coming on. He's going to be doing the Broncos. We've got other guys that are doing the Patriots and the Steelers already. So under this channel, the Undroppables, we're already doing the whole uncovered thing is all team specific. So it's team specific content creators, and we're glad that you guys are here for the journey. Anything that you want to say as a good night, Tyler?
I'm just looking forward to next week. Free agency will be in full swing. We'll have a lot more answers to a lot of our questions. We'll have a lot better idea of what our mock draft should look like. And we'll have a lot more peace of mind and be able to sleep at night. So I'm just looking forward to that.
All right. And people can find your content on Twitter.
Yeah, on Twitter and on the RaiderRamble.com. During the season, I do my Raiderdamus column where I just do a Comedy Central roast of whoever the Raiders are playing that week. And I just really let them have it. So during the season, check it out. And I hope you enjoy it.
So good. At Raiderdamus on Twitter and Tyler and Raiderdamus on the Raider Ramble. Thank you guys for watching and getting involved in the comments. I do want this to be a user-generated show, a viewer-generated show. If you have any questions, we can do a mailbag. Go to @BigBonedFFB on Twitter and send me questions and stuff, and I'll address them. And we will be back with you next week at 8 p.m. Pacific time. And until then, fuck the Broncos. Oh, wait, I forgot. There's an outro video that I need. Where to go? Okay. And, God, we're getting riveting content. There we go.
Absolutely.
Our little producer desk is getting so cluttered. All right, here we go.